Yay! We're back again, Brian and Shauna Christian with Heavy Revy TV. This is your moment. This is your time. Dun dun dun.
You just come up with the funniest stuff.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's right off the top of my head. See how creative I am? Anyway, we just want to welcome all those that are coming on here, and we appreciate you. Today we wanted to talk about Into the Unknown and what that actually looks like. And, this is I really believe that this is one of the most vital revelations. If we can get this, see, we can have all these encounters in eternity. We can have all these cool visions and dreams, but usually once we have them, an event comes that looks like it's an impossible situation that seems like it's blocking everything we experienced, and it's outside the comfort zone into the unknown. We don't get all the answers ahead of time. We don't have all the understanding of what we're doing. So we sit back in our fear and we wait for a confirmation, which is fear and has nothing to do with being led by the Spirit. Okay. And so, as we unpack this, good to see you, Sean.
Hey, Sean.
And Sean and family and all those that are watching us now. We're going to be talking about the unknown today and the familiar and what is that and how they each oppose each other. And again, we don't want to make this message extreme. So there's nothing wrong with having familiar things in your life. There isn't. Hey, it's called stability. You have things in order. You have things that you do a certain way. We're not talking about that side of the familiar. We're talking about what if a situation arises and your familiar situation is ripped out from underneath you? How can you function then? And I think as we can learn to be able to adapt to whatever is going on and just simply go with the flow of what's unveiling, we will grow at an accelerated rate, and we will find ourselves coming into a lot more of an experience of playing, adventuring, enjoying. But our familiar keeps us from actually going outside that box. And so, honey, would you like to share some of your own journey of what was behind the familiar in you? I mean, there's the positive familiar that can move in the unknown and is pliable and bendable and movable like the wind, right? But what about that rigid part of familiarity to where we don't want to move? What does that look like in your life, and what's behind it?
I think for me, the parts of myself that I have found just afraid, fearful, or anxious about stepping into something that I can't physically see or even understand. It has to do with, I think, losing myself. And I've noticed that a lot of times when I get anxious, I feel like this uneasy feeling physically, but it really is stemming from my feeling like I'm losing myself.
Yes.
I'm losing a grip on what is my reality,
Yes.
especially when things are constantly changing. And so change is good. We love change sometimes. We love the adventure of life and we get excited, but it's the part that is the unknown, which in real life, everything is unknown.
Yes.
You don't know what it's going to look like sometimes. And there's also a beautiful unveiling in that part and that aspect of life too.
That's beautiful.
But that's what I noticed for me is the part of me that feels like I am losing myself.
I think that is a big part. And, sometimes I feel like the best way to understand familiarity is we want to venture in life, but we want to stay in that little hamster ball. You ever have a hamster and you want them to run around the house, but you have other animals that are going to eat them? So you put them in one of those little plastic see-through balls and they run around.
Yeah.
And so we think we're experiencing life, but we're experiencing it within the confines of the familiar.
In a bubble.
And so we really can't experience anything beyond the bubble. We're just getting a revelation. We're just seeing this. we're just, receiving this information and this encounter, but we can't apply it to our lives because we won't come out of the familiar.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing you brought up, and I think that's important, is the need to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in the familiar, that becomes the excuse to not step into the unknown, is because I don't understand it. And if I'm supposed to be in it, I'll know it, and then I'll know to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, understanding is not required. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, most of the time you don't get understanding until you're in the unknown.
Or
Yeah.
what you think you understood,
Yes.
as you're in it, you really don't know nothing.
Correct. You're just, again, there's a lot of self-manipulation that is going on in our own minds when it comes to the familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say, like you said, the fear seems to be the biggest part here. And I did some posts today on fear, on the familiar and the unknown a little bit, to give you kind of a little understanding. And somewhere here is my phone. And I just kind of wanted to read part of one of these posts that I just did that will give us a little bit of understanding here. So I put this: freedom from fear allows you to live life as an adventure, free to experience and experiment.
Right.
Okay. And so this is something that's really important for us to understand, is that when we are free from fear, we'll step into the unknown. But when we have fear, we will reside in the familiar. And the familiar will be wherever we believe we have understood who we are. Now, this is the box we stop at, right? And this is what we end up doing. We see it in church denominations. We really see it in every religion where they arrive at this is it and nothing else. That is fear. That is really fear. Now, 1 Corinthians 13 tells us that about love, it says to know as you've always been known. That's what it says, to know as you've always been known, which basically means in order to know how much I'm known or loved or celebrated or received, I'm going to have to do what? I'm going to have to know something I can't know in the place I'm in right now. And so no matter how much I understand where I'm at, if I get stuck in that comfort zone, in which where I'm at is based in fear of going outside of where I'm at, then what's going to happen is the moment my world turns upside down, I'm going to crumble. I'm going to lose myself, and I'm going to lose the structures of what I built myself to be that isn't actually who I am. And so this is something that I think.
As you were saying that, I was thinking about comfort. With not only the familiarity, but there's also comfort when it's coming from who you are.
Yes.
Then comfort is not based upon what's happening externally, but it's an internal resting place.
Yes.
And an internal place to abide, that you are comforted.
Oh, yeah.
And really, I know for myself, a lot of times, even if I'm fearful and scared, I have experienced it enough to know, like, if I'm fearful, it just means that that's an area within myself that I have not experienced love.
Yes.
And that's okay. And it doesn't have to be this horrible, bad thing. It just is kind of a wake-up call, an alarm clock, something to show you what's going on. And I just use fear to kind of catapult me into those areas of facing myself.
Yes.
Because that's really what I'm afraid of.
That's it.
Is facing myself.
Yes. You don't have to stop.
No, go ahead.
Going. Well, I just wanted to put this up here for Sean that put up. Familiarity for me often shows up on comfort. We are hardwired to often take the path of least resistance, but it's through the resistance, just like working out, we grow.
Right.
And that is so true. And that path of least resistance is because we've either had an experience in the past that programmed us to believe we can only go so far, or we've had bad experiences in which we're like, well, I ain't doing that again. So we always conclude that if an experience is coming in the present that's similar to the past, it has to be bad like the past. And the past probably wasn't bad because we never really faced it. We avoided it. And our conclusion of it being bad has led us in a cycle of resisting anything that cycles back through that is actually there to be redeemed. And it takes us stepping out of that comfort zone in order to redeem our history. So, so that's beautiful, Sean.
That's good.
Did you want to share anything more?
No.
Okay. I want to read you a little bit more of what I wrote here in a post, because this goes a little bit along with the direction we're going here. And so fear declares freedom, but never experiences it. So realize that all the times that we are proclaiming, when we're in the glory, when we're clear in the spirit, and we're like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And we're talking about all the things we're going to do. You know how many times I've had people come to us and say, God spoke to us, we're supposed to go with you, and we're going to get an RV and travel with you. Not one has done it yet. Okay. Now, why? Because in the moment they felt liberated, but once they came out of that moment of clarity, they settled back into their familiarity, and they found all the reasons why they couldn't do that, and even called it God leading. I don't know how many times I hear from people, and I used to do the same. So this is not condemnation. It's just the way it is how many times have we said, God spoke to me to do this. And then right after that, as soon as our mind shifts and fear comes in, all of a sudden God changed his mind. All of a sudden, I'm not feeling led to do that now. And it's like, okay, so God, I don't know. I just, divinity is double-minded, and and calling people on their stuff. You can't do that if they're in the familiar, because the familiar also breeds the fear of control. Okay. Because we stay in the familiar because somewhere in the past, we believe we were out of control or being controlled. And so we even will get away from those that controlled us, and we'll claim freedom from control, but we never dealt with our mind. Okay. And so because of that, the moment anybody calls us on our crap saying, hey, is your God double-minded? Because mine isn't. I actually put action to my words and everything I sense and hear. What happens is they immediately reject you as trying to control them, because the fear is starting to feel like torment. So they have to come up with a reason to stay in familiarity. And so, yes, like Mary just said, fear is a dead expression. Faith is a live expression. I love that. That's beautiful. And so fear declares freedom, but never experiences. It's all talk, but no action. Fear masquerades as discernment, but constantly changes its mind. Okay. That's a big one. All right. 1 minute we get a revelation to step out. Next minute, God has changed his mind. Fear decides what is and isn't good based on emotion. I'll tell you one thing.
Right.
Even though emotion is wonderful to feel and it's painful to feel, we don't base our life on what we feel. And most of the time, though, and I'll tell you, there's hardly anybody that doesn't live in that, doesn't struggle with that. I mean, we're still in process of nobody's arrived in this, guys, in our actions, in our living it out fully. But this is why we're doing these videos, to learn how can we live out fully, how not to give into fear, how to come out of the familiar, how to step into the unknown. Because here's the thing, no matter how much you master your familiarity and your comfort zone, and even declare it to be your refuge in God, okay, which is our Yahweh, our golden calf, right? Something's going to come along and flip it over. How many times have we got things all in order in our life, and then here it comes, boom. All of a sudden, it's either something trying to prevent our familiarity or something trying to pull us out of our familiarity. And we think it's an interruption when it's actually an invitation into our true nature as spontaneity. See, spontaneity is the suddenly of God as you. It's where you flourish. It's where you learn to play. It's childlike faith. I mean, if a child isn't told, don't go over there and pat that dog, that child is going to go run over and pet this dog it doesn't know. Now, of course, we want wisdom in what we do and so on and so forth. But a child isn't afraid of anything until they're told to be afraid. Okay, until they're taught by their parents. to be weary, beware, be
Experience.
cautious, and so
Mm-hmm.
our parents have, unfortunately brainwashed us with their own experiences, and out of their pain we've adopted that and we've carried it on
Mm-hmm.
as discernment, as wisdom, as being balanced, okay? And the best balance is no balance. I'll tell you that right now. That's the best balance, because every time you try to balance something, you're going to go extreme in one direction or another,
Mm-hmm.
because you're still trying to balance it through fear. Fear needs to understand before it steps out. Fear needs to experience something before it experiences it in order to validate whether it's worth experiencing it.
Right.
Fear will judge what it's never experienced and throw it away because it has never experienced it. All right. Fear will rationalize on all sides. And what's sad about this is, and this was my thing, this is what I did with fear. Okay. My own personal experience here is that I was able to use religion in my fear so that I could get God to agree with my fear. Okay. And at least that's what I thought I was doing, but it was the God of my own making, the God of fear that I had created.
What did that look like?
Well, that looked like basically I could get all kinds of revelation in scripture to justify why I couldn't go out of my comfort zone or familiarity. I had an answer for everything. I remember I used to work for, and in some ways I still have an answer for everything, and I'm working on that. But I have had. I used to work for Quaker State. It was like a oil change place for your vehicle. It was called Q Lube. Now they're all closed now, but I was a manager there. But before I was a manager, I was just an employee, and I was very insecure in my identity. And I remember people would ask me a question. Well, why do you do this, or why do you say that? Just little things they would pick up on in just the way I express myself, speak or react or respond. And I felt like I had to have the answer every time. And so I remember this one guy saying, "You know what I noticed about you? You always have an answer. Why is that?" And it stuck with me, and it messed with me, because I'm like, why is this guy like attacking me? He wasn't attacking me. He was attacking my fear. See, I needed an answer to be valid.
Yeah.
And so fear always moves a lot with invalidation. And when we're not valid and we mix spirituality and we decorate our fear and our invalidation with garments of God, and we dress them up to look like Jesus, what we end up doing is validating our invalidation and saying our fear is love, or our fear is discernment. And so we mix it together and we find a way to weasel our way out of breakthrough, all because we're afraid of what we don't understand. Why don't you talk a little bit about what that means to you, honey, when it comes to we fear what we don't understand. Have you ever walked through that?
Fear of what? I kind of shared about that.
Yeah.
I think my biggest one, it's been really good, because I was a little bit feeling a little anxious the last couple of days, anxiety and on edge and whatnot. I have not felt like that in a long time, and it was really good because I think I've understood. I even found familiarity in having anxiety, and I knew enough to know it's just areas of myself that I need to be loved in. So it's nothing bad. Because the idea or the thought that there was something wrong with me would intensify the anxiety. And so, but there was also areas within myself, I realized after we were talking about it, that I did still believe maybe I did something wrong. And that's why I'm feeling anxiety. I didn't even know I still believed it. I didn't know I believed that. And just talking about it and hearing and talking about it, and it really did help bring some more light onto it. And you had a great idea. I think when we hear the words like embrace, especially doing like shift and stuff like that, we talk about embracing our situations, not needing to resist anything, because nothing can be stolen from you and nobody can take anything from you. And so with that, I had to realize with the anxiety, I told you, I'm like, what does that look like to embrace anxiety?
Yes.
And you had such a great point. You said, what's the flip side? Because if anxiety and excitement are the exact same feelings in your body and the emotions,
Yeah. They're both the same.
They have the exact same thing. You got your heart rate going, the same
everything.
Yeah, it's still the
It's just
same.
the conclusion of you of
Yes.
whether or not it's anxiety or excitement.
Right. And so it was so good having this deep conversation of looking for the wonder in the anxiety.
Yes.
And I was just like, whoa, who would have thought to look for the wonder and the excitement on the flip side of feeling anxiety? And that so helped me. And I began to realize parts of myself that I felt like I was losing myself, and I'm trying to hold on to what I know, find the familiar. But really, the letting go, embracing everything, and looking for the adventure, the wonder on the flip side of it, I actually got excited, and the anxiety shifted, and all of a sudden I began to see who I really am. And it was so beautiful that I had a safe place to do that.
Yes.
And I feel like, there's many people out there who struggle with anxiety, who struggle with panic attacks, who struggle with all of this stuff, and don't necessarily feel like they have a safe place.
Yes.
And so I just encourage everyone, if you are struggling with some anxiety, take a break, take a deep breath, and do what I just did. Like, look for the wonder. Look for the excitement in the anxiety.
Yes.
Why does it have to be bad?
Yeah, we always expect the worst.
Because we concluded that it is bad.
Yeah.
And somewhere I've concluded this, and this, and this. And so I found it very interesting that I was almost familiar in the anxiety.
Yes.
And we do that, right? We get familiar with worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. We get familiar with some of these other things when, what if, shifting our mind has to do with actually looking for goodness, actually looking for wholeness and who I am in the midst of anxiety. And I realized I can't be lost. I can't be taken away from who I really am. I might find another part of myself I didn't know because I let go of what was familiar.
That's right.
You're going to shift either way. Eventually you come out of it. So do it with some adventure and excitement.
Yeah. Well, some don't come out of it in this life. And I think that brings me to the next point, is that, there are seasons that come your way, and you will pass through seasons that are designed to pull you out of the familiar. Okay. Jump on that bandwagon when you see it, because if you delay it, and I've experienced this in my life,
right, me too.
And I've had many experience it, when it passes, you're stuck in that season until it comes back around again. Mm-hmm. And so you have seasons of accelerated growth that if you're too afraid to jump on, you're in a sense left behind in your mind. Okay. Right. And so you'll sit on the sidelines watching everybody else step in, and that's going to cause you to do what? Enter into self-condemnation. Oh, now I got regret. Now I'm just going to feed that fear even more to stay in the familiar the next time it comes around. Right. Okay. And so you won't be able to fit in to the mold, or not, I don't even like the word mold, but you won't even be able to fit into the current emphasis of what's being expressed and revealed. You'll be on the outside of it. And this is something that I learned the hard way many a times. And so now I am the first one to jump on the bandwagon. I'm like, nope, I ain't sitting on the sidelines waiting another year.
You are. You crack me up.
And I've seen it up to, and not just a year, I've seen people where the season came for them to step out and stretch their legs and break free from the fear and the apprehension. And they stayed in it. And some of these seasons aren't a 3-month, 4-month season like winter, summer, spring, or fall. Right. Some of them go on for years. Okay.
We experienced that.
Yeah, we've experienced that.
Yeah. And it's like, once you're aware of it, I think that's the key.
Yes.
It's like, there's a lot of people who aren't aware of it, and that's because they're not supposed to be.
Yes.
But if you see it for yourself, jump in.
Yes.
Jump in, because this life is about the adventure. This life is about, the joy, the goodness. And
Yeah.
Daryl had a good question I want to get back to, but it's way up there. But he was talking about, what if you don't have a grid for goodness? What if you don't have a grid for even love? Like, how do you apply some of this stuff?
Where's it at?
Right there.
Oh, right there. Let's put it up there for everybody to see.
Yeah, this is such a good question.
Yeah. Well, what if you have no grid for goodness and love? Well, it's real simple. Do you have people in your life that love you? Do you catch glimpses of those that have come to you and say, you're a good guy? Do you have, find the little simple, still small voice subliminal expressions, because all of those are the grid for goodness and love. Have you ever desired to help somebody or to be a blessing to somebody? There's another grid for goodness and love. Okay. And so simply looking at those moments where you have experienced the embrace with one another in your personal time, going within, and what came out of that, you're looking at, well, we want to see that established everywhere. And so the situations that arise that are uncomfortable are there to bring about what we had in those little flash moments of goodness and love, to see it actually applied practically and materialized as we step out of the box. And so we have to get to the point to where our love outweighs our fear. We have to get to the point where love outweighs the fear, because I'm going to be perfectly honest. The best way for me has been to go overboard in communicating what I'm really doing to myself, because you've got to kind of shock yourself into it. So when I am saying, I'm one with God, I'm in love, God's calling us to go love people, God's calling us to go do this, and a situation arises that is going to stretch you to fulfill that, and you say, no, that's not God, God doesn't want me to do that, he's put me here, and it becomes a self-justification. What you're really saying is, I'm a hypocrite, I don't know who I am, and I really don't want to implement love. Now, if we will say that to ourselves, then we're going to say, no, that's not who I am. I am love, so I need to step out. So we need to confront ourselves with what we're really doing to ourselves, and quit candy coating it, which is just another ruse of what? Familiarity, right?
Oh man, we are so good at manipulating ourselves.
Oh, self-manipulation. Oh man, self-manipulation is what mankind does more than anything else. And so, give yourself grace. Giving yourself grace is not sitting there. Giving yourself grace is getting out of your comfort zone. Robbing yourself of grace is staying in the familiar, because the familiar takes your effort to stay there. But the unknown is where grace abounds. So to know as you've always been known in 1 Corinthians 13 begins when you step out of the familiar and into the unknown. We've been living in the unknown for a long time. And some of it not by our choice, okay? But we finally realized that every time we would be in the familiar and we'd be knocked out because some situation would come, and we'd throw our fit and we'd demand our way and we'd renounce and we'd decree and we'd call forth and we'd demand and all these things that are just ego trying to protect itself. We would, then all of a sudden we'd start breaking through and we'd have all this breakthrough, and then here come the next place, and we wouldn't budge again. And so when we launched out in 2018, I told Sean, I said, here we go. There's no more familiar. And we launched out, and it was like being in a surreal dream state for the first 2 years, not even knowing where we were going or what we were doing, and yet it would all fall into place, and all these people's lives were changed. We were changed.
Yeah, we had no grid.
We had no grid.
For what the heck we were doing. And I remember we felt like we were in a dream state. Like literally, there was nothing we could even hold on to.
Yeah, we're like, whoa. That's how we were all the time.
All the time.
We were checked out, man. We were checked
and
out.
and I asked myself, I asked God, I'm like, okay, what is going on? Why
Yeah.
are we in this?
Yeah.
Why are we living this life of living in a dream state?
Yeah.
And I heard you're no longer living your life. And it really blew my mind because in
Yeah.
my life, it would look like this.
Yeah.
Simplicity, easy,
Yes.
everything easy and fast and instant gratification and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't find myself in all of that. I wouldn't grow and experience new experiences in things that I already know it's going to look like this. I already know it's going to happen like this. You lose this, like you said, the spontaneity
Yes.
of love.
It's now duty.
Yes. And so when you feel like you're flying by the seat of your pants and
Yes.
you are like the wind, not knowing whether you're coming or going, but your stability is not in outward situations, but in who you are, then it doesn't matter if you're flying by the seat of your pants. You know, it could be fun.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah, detours come in your life in the midst of everything that you chose as your
Right.
own adventure,
Yeah.
even when you're willing to step out. So we will step out to a degree. Now, let me give you an example of familiarity manipulating itself. Familiarity will, at one point, step out and appear to step out of its comfort zone, but with a false expectation and a demand of what it is supposed to look like when they step out. And if
Right.
it doesn't look like that, they step back in, they quit.
Mhm.
And here's the thing that you shared about instant gratification. Anything that you are willing to jump into while being familiar, that is instant gratification, or no, let me say it this way. Anything that you say yes to for instant gratification, it will only feed your familiarity.
Mhm.
Anytime,
and that's
yeah,
and that's why
yes,
when it's time to do those things and you're not getting that instant gratification, you're questioning whether you need to be doing it or not.
yep, you'll quit. You will
Because it
not be
doesn't
able.
look the way you thought it was
Yes.
supposed to.
Yeah. So familiarity and instant gratification go hand in hand, and it feeds the fear so that the fear
Mhm.
doesn't create torment. See, what does it say? It says, fear causes torment, for he that is tormented is not made perfect in love. Okay. Perfect love casts out fear, right? So what is the torment and fear? Because most people's fear is their comfort zone. Okay. So it's your comfort zone
Mhm.
until it's opposed or until you're called out of it. And every time
Right.
you don't line up with what your fear believes, you will experience torment. Okay. And that's the fear beating you up on the inside. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's really us beating ourselves up. It's not
Mhm.
some separate entity.
Mm-mm.
It is us. That's why we have not received the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. See, what that's showing is that my mind, for my mind to be sound, to be renewed, to operate in the Christ mind, to simply live life as, as divinity has seen it and experienced it, I have to have let go of fear. I have to have enabled love. I have to have allowed power. Okay. Now, we're powerless in fear, but when we put ourselves outside of into the unknown, we begin to experience power beyond our ability to perform or measure up. See, fear demands you have to measure up, and where you are familiar in what you have measured up in and confident in, that confidence will become the excuser of why you don't need to go any further to where you're already confident. Well, I made it this far. Look at all these things I've overcome. That's what fear says, by the way. Fear says, well, I've overcome this. I've done this. I'm not required to do that. I'm free to do what I want and make my own decisions. So I don't really need to go here or do that. Because why? Because I'm afraid of it. Okay. We want to say it's freedom, but it's fear masquerading as freedom.
Mhm.
And the indoctrination that we've,
Right.
manipulated ourselves with, right?
We're lying to ourselves.
We're lying to ourselves, right? And so, the best way to get rid of a trigger is to throw yourself in a situation where you're constantly triggered.
Mhm.
The best way to hide from yourself is to avoid the trigger and keep spinning around the same season of your life. Now, let me tell you this. Your season is going to have glory in it, and it's going to have tough things in it. One season is not just the dark night of the soul. If it was, you would want to get out of your familiarity, okay? But usually you have a glory, a breakthrough, a revelation, a journeying out with people, then a dark night of the soul. That's all one season before you hit the next flow, okay? Now, when you hit that dark night of the soul, you will see right outside that dark night all this invitation into that which you believe is beyond your ability to measure up in. You're not there yet. You can't step into that. Well, you're never going to get there that way. You're only going to get there by stepping out where you can't uphold yourself, where you can't walk. It's the only place. You got to get out of the boat to walk on the water. Because if you don't get out, you'll never experience the power of God beyond yourself. And therefore, you will always be trying to measure up and perform and weighing everything as to whether or not you can endure it. Okay. And so, yeah, just like Daniel Somerville is talking about, this is really good, guys. He says, agreed. I like to put myself in the hard triggering situations within, so I don't need to always live them out externally. Take the dump truck all the way to the dump and embrace the fear internally. So true. We can do a lot of this in secret, that we don't need a circumstance. But if you won't face yourself in secret,
Right.
you will need a circumstance. And that situation will be the crucible that helps to set you free. So what is it? What does the proverb say? The wise learns by instruction, but the fool learns by experience. And again, sometimes we all need to be the fool and learn by experiences, and I get that. But if we've been the fool for the last 20 years and all we've learned is by experiences, then we truly are the fool, and it's time to wise up and say, you know, maybe I should look at what was the instruction in all of these pitfalls that I can learn from, so I don't have to keep falling in the same pit. And, you know, and so Sean Bullock says, familiarity breeds confidence. Confidence creates a ceiling. A ceiling will create stagnation.
Yes.
So true. Now that is a bam, pow, wow word right there, because it is, but it's a false confidence.
Yes.
It's a confidence in our own ability to measure up. Okay, so wherever you've measured up in your own eyes, you will become familiar, and that will become your point of contact to prove you don't need to go over here into the unknown where it feels insecure. Okay, but if we'll go there, guess what's going to happen? We're going to break through. You know, if you go back to the family reunion where last time you went, you were not included, you were not a part of it, and they didn't want you there, and you decide, I'm going back anyway, you know, and I'm gonna let them do their thing, and I'm gonna you know, deal with my triggers, deal with my thing, right?
Right.
You know.
That's so
All right. So Jen wants another example of this, just for more clarity.
Example
of stepping out of, coming out of familiarity and into the unknown.
Okay, let's use an example like you just said. Where let's say you go somewhere where you're not necessarily, there's maybe somebody there or people there that don't you've had an issue with, or there's not been resolved, and you show up anyways.
Yeah.
Not because you need something to happen to make something happen, because you are actually an example of love.
Yes.
And so fear would say, oh, that's awkward. There hasn't been reconciliation. Yeah. There needs this, and this, because I feel uncomfortable. I feel other people's uncomfortable. Yeah. But love doesn't have any conditions.
Yes.
Love shows up whether things have been cleared out or not.
That's right.
And so fear says, I need resolution. I need to look like this. Yes. I need that. I need that. But love, which is the flip side of fear, says, I'm going to show up anyways.
Yes.
And that is true vulnerability. Yes. I was trying to find a freaking quote from the Green Lantern. That hit me. I have struggled with fear my whole life. Yeah. And I've learned to love that part of myself.
Yes.
Don't look at fear like there's something wrong with you.
No.
It's kept you alive.
It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to experience grace in that
Yes.
place. Now let's look at that same situation on the
Okay.
flip side of the coin with coming out of familiarity. Let's say you're one that's codependent and you're always the one that shows up and you just stay being the welcome mat because you don't want to be rejected by not showing up.
Mm-hmm.
You see? And now you feel the need to stand and to say, you know what? I'm actually being delivered from this place where
Right.
there is no love or is no honor, and you do not want to feed that codependent
Right.
narcissistic mindset anymore. And you're actually coming into being healthy with healthy boundaries.
Right.
That is also coming out of your familiarity because
Mhm.
you can be so familiar with being a welcome mat that to come out of that familiarity can
Mhm.
be sometimes harder than showing up where
Right.
someone might not like you, but you're there as a revelation of love. Okay. So,
Right.
you know, it can go either way. So,
Right. It just what is being emphasized for you,
yes,
and asking yourself, well,
yes,
why do I not want to do this, or why do I want to
yes,
do this? Because it all goes back to an intention.
yes,
And once you're truly honest with yourself, you'll see whether you're moving out of love or fear,
yep,
or you're moving out of needing to be accepted,
hmm,
or whether you're doing it just because you accept yourself and everybody else around you.
yep,
So it really just depends on what's being emphasized for you. There is no one case fits all in
that's right,
anything.
that's right.
It
I like.
is,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead.
go ahead.
It's just what is being presently emphasized
Yes,
for you.
yes,
What is your truth right now?
that's right. So I like this fear. Mike Popovich reminds to absorb the fear, come to grips with it, and then realize it's nothing.
Yes.
So true,
That is
because
so good.
in actuality, fear is for our entertainment,
Right.
and it actually doesn't exist in reality. It only exists in a false reality,
Right.
which is who we're not and what we've settled for in
Right.
who we're not. And
Right.
I love that quote there.
That's so good. Thank you, Christian.
Yes, but you know it's amazing because you know whatever you're struggling in, the opposite will be your way out of it. So for instance, let's say you're a person that that you're always running at the mouth, but you have a hard time listening. When it's time to step out of that place and into a place of dealing with the fear behind that, the need to be heard, okay, you'll be put in a place where you can't get a word in edgewise, or all of a sudden you got nothing to say, and all that inadequacy starts to come up because
Mm-hmm.
it's almost like you believe your acceptance was based on your words and your ability to talk, and now you have no talent, you have nothing to offer, nothing to give, and now you begin to deal with those mindsets
Mm-hmm.
that are familiar to you, that's kept you in the box, right?
Right.
But
Right.
let's say you learn to listen and be still, and the season after that, guess what? It's time. You're now being called into talking again. You don't want
Mm-hmm.
to because you're like, I'm fine now. I don't really need to
Right.
talk because I've realized I'm heard. I realized I'm loved, and I don't need to be in front of people or on the pedestal. And now you're being pushed out of the familiarity of what you've just this last season you're in. Remember, every season becomes familiar, guys. I don't think we're ever
Right.
going to get out of familiarity because we broke it one time. This is an ongoing awareness that says, I get
Mm-hmm.
hypnotized by the matrix and I sink into it passively and I get comfortable
Right.
where I believe I've arrived.
Right. And that's kind of like what you're saying
Yes.
is this isn't for everybody. This message is not, again, for everyone.
Yeah.
But if you are in a place where you are wanting to have new experiences, but
Yeah.
you don't know how, why, what, when, where, all
Sure.
of that, it is probably areas where you have become familiar
Yep.
and areas where you are afraid to walk into.
Yes.
And that is what we're kind of talking about. And so
Yes.
if you are aware of it and you're like, oh man, this is so relates to me, then so be it.
Yes.
But it isn't for everybody because there are so many people that will experience familiarity and are completely content with being in the
Yes.
familiar.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you are like me or you and want to like stretch ourselves, even though we hate the stretching,
Yes.
but we also want to be the the best, highest version of ourselves
Yes.
in whatever the heck that looks like, then there you go. It's usually areas of loving yourself and facing your fears and coming out of some of that familiarity where you're going to experience the depths of
Yes.
who you are.
Now, I like how Daryl, and that was beautiful, honey. I like how Daryl said this. Yes, I'm in that place. New experience is needed. Now, I want to share with you, we always want the glory experiences, but we don't want to walk through the crucible. Okay? You will get the glory experience even if you avoid the crucible.
Right.
The problem is it will do you no good and it will not change your life. It will be a carrot that's right out of reach. It will be an experience that you will keep seeking and seeking and seeking with no fruit in your life, because the crucible allows the experience to land in the intention. Okay. Remember, it's all about the intentions behind why we do what we do. It's not what we believe, but why we believe it that makes all the difference.
Right.
That either is setting us free into the unknown or keeping us in bondage to the familiar.
Right.
Okay. And so all these opportunities come every day when your spouse freaks out on you. You have the opportunity to stay in the familiar and react like you've always reacted, or jump up, go, and say, you know what? How you feeling, honey? Is there anything I can do to make your day better? Or I'm sorry if I've upset you. How can I serve you? How can I love you? Okay. And not looking for an immediate response,
right,
but simply letting that be your life, and without any false expectations in return of what you should be getting in return. And I think that becomes a big point of contact as well. You know, it's all the little things that we avoid are actually the places where a lot of the powerful God experiences we want land on those places. So we're building foundations for God to land through our life upon and to establish that realm of glory and that peace and that single eye and that oneness. But that ground has been plowed because we chose not to react. We chose to step out. We chose to serve. We chose to go the extra mile. You know, we chose to try new things that we're afraid to do, you know, and it doesn't matter what those new things are. I mean, in our day today, in society today, if you look around, it looks like the world has gone crazy. I mean, everybody's just all over the place, and some of it is a little nuts, okay? But we're not to sit and get stuck in that. We're not to judge, well, so-and-so did this, and they didn't get anything from it, so now I'm not going to do it because I didn't get anything, because I'm not going to. You haven't tried it. You're ignorant of it, and you didn't try it, so why are you taking somebody else's opinion, you know, without experiencing it to decide it for yourself? Okay. Don't listen to the fear around you where somebody else might have done something and didn't get what they believe for. You know, if that mindset in them is in you, you're going to agree with where they're at. And so instead, you know, hear everybody where they're at, hear everybody's experiences, but realize this: if you are looking to find a way out of an experience that you're afraid to have, you should definitely do that experience just because you're looking for a way out of it.
right.
You should do it then, you know,
Yep.
and don't worry about, let the chips fall where they may.
Let the
you know?
fear catapult you into that new experience.
Yes.
Brene Brown has a quote, and I can't remember it for word, but there's two quotes that I wanted to share that have changed my life. One is, I think it was from Green Lantern years ago, and it was about fear, and I can't really remember it, but it was basically, fear is not the absence. You don't have the absence of fear to have courage.
Yeah.
And that really hit me.
Yes.
So we think people who are brave and courageous, it's because they got rid of the fear and they knew the truth. No.
Yes.
It's not true. They probably were fearful and did it anyways.
Yeah.
And then they found out how courageous they really are.
That's right.
And so we cannot experience how courageous and brave we really are until we experience fear and do things anyways, because we realize that fear cannot control us unless we allow it. Yes. That was one quote that just really helped me and changed my life. The other one was about Brene Brown, where she talks about vulnerability and how that is actually true bravery.
Yes.
Because when you don't know what some of the other people are going to do to you or not do for you, and you show up anyways, that is going against the fear.
That's right.
Right. And showing up anyways. And that was so powerful to me, that we show up every day. Every day there are opportunities where we are brave.
Yes.
Every day there are opportunities where we are being vulnerable. It's how much more do you desire to experience for yourself?
That's right.
It's up to you. That's right. You know, and take those moments as, like you said, giving yourself grace.
Yes.
Like, wow, I was so brave today. I faced this even though I was so afraid. That's right. And you'll realize that the fear will have less and less power for you to make decisions. Yes. And again, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. I think many struggle with fear and they just don't really know how to share it.
Fear of being rejected, fear of being duped, fear of being controlled, fear of being deceived, fear of being let down. And yet we want to call it wisdom.
Right.
And it's not wisdom. It's not discernment. Discernment, it has nothing to do with your emotions. I want to put this up here because I like Jen's comment here. And I want to give both sides of this, what Jen Makita just said here. I've had times I didn't step out and regretted, but the Lord seemed to always bring me back around. Yes, you always come back around because you're in a wheel within a wheel. You're always coming full circle, so you always get another opportunity.
Right.
But do not let that revelation justify the need to stay in the familiar the next time.
Right.
Because it will come up to say, it'll come back around. And what happens is eventually we end up in a long season where we didn't have to go through some of those things.
Right.
And so it is something that I think is true, but also something that fear will grab hold of when I used the reference before of how we will take spiritual things in our fear and use it to justify and protect us. We'll use God as a shield to our fear, right? But that's a good one, Jen. And I think that's really important that we know that and we get that. And so now you put up here, Julie, when walking in this wonderful love and oneness, I have felt to avoid negative religious mindsets. Now, there's a healthy place. In other words, you don't have to, you're allowed to move your space if you want to. Okay. But there are seasons where if everywhere you go, there's only religious negative mindsets and you can't seem to escape it, then it's a setup, a divine setup to mirror unto you some regret of your own journey through religion. Okay. I know when I first started deconstructing and coming out of religiosity, well, not first, it's been my whole journey I've been deconstructing, but I'm just saying in the last 5 years when it went really extreme, I couldn't be around religious people at all. It just made me nauseous. I couldn't stand it. And I realized I was judging them. And then I realized I really wasn't judging them. I was judging my time of being in religion. And there was a regret because there was a part of me that says, man, I wish I had known this sooner. I wouldn't have gone through this, that, or the other. And I had to come to grips with the fact that everything I went through, all the this, that, and the other, is what brought me to the deconstructed state of oneness. And so it actually became a beautiful journey. And when that happened, religious people no longer bothered me.
Right.
Okay. Now that doesn't mean you should sit and fight with them and try to prove to them there is no devil and we're all one, because that ain't love neither. That's still a need to prove yourself.
Yeah, I was going to say, anytime you need to prove anything to anyone, you're still yet trying to prove it to yourself.
Oh yeah, exactly. And so Joyce Myers, I like Jackie. I have to say, Joyce Myers helped me so many years ago. She said, even if you're in fear, just do it in fear. So I did again and again, and it becomes my normal. And I think that is important because what do? We rest on our emotions and on what we're currently feeling as the proof of what God is saying, and that's a smokescreen. All right, but we all do it in the beginning.
Right.
But what do? We get this revelation on the mountaintop, and we got this. God said, leave your job, Shauna, and we're going to launch out and the move of God all over America. And we're all excited until about a month before.
2 months before.
2 months before.
Did he really say,
do
this?
Did he really say?
Shouldn't I have faith like I should really believe that he
Yeah.
said this, right? Otherwise it's not going to work.
Yes.
Because if I don't have faith in something, it's just going to crumble and it's not going to
Yes.
work.
Yes.
So maybe we shouldn't step out
Yeah.
because then it's just going to crumble.
Yeah. And what do we say? Because I feel this in my mind, it must not be the timing. You see how we will use our familiar to claim the timing of God because we now no longer believe it's God because we have fear. Can I tell you that it doesn't matter what your mind says? That has nothing to do with faith. Faith isn't in your mind. Faith is in your action.
Yes.
So you don't believe by faith, you step out, and that is believing by faith. So we don't love in word or in tongue, we love in deed and in truth.
Right.
And so if you step out, no matter what your mind says, it will bring your mind subject because you're bringing your thoughts captive to obedience. And so obedience is you acting upon truth, whether your mind believes it or not. And then your mind comes subject to your actions. And that's how you bring it subject.
Yes.
So you have to step out of the familiar and into the unknown. What'd she say? I know his voice and what he says. Then I say yes, and the shit hits the fan in every area, but the end result is amazing. It's true. Well, we need that shit because what that does is it's manure. It's for our tree. It's to bear fruit.
Yes.
So let the manure hit the fan.
And spread all over the place and fertilize all those areas in you.
Fertilize it, man. Fertilize it. But let me just say, let me remember what I was going to say here. Let's talk a little bit about the unknown and the benefits of the unknown. We've hit a lot into the unknown. So what are some benefits of the unknown? And you guys comment what you think benefits you have had when you've stepped out fearful, the familiar struggled, you broke through, and you saw God come through for you. You saw a promise, you saw prophetic fulfillment, you saw wholeness, whatever it is. Why don't you share on here as well? Because I think that's really important, because for us, it was, and I'm going to be perfectly honest, we've been in this for 15 years, Sean and I, in married together and in the ministry together. So we've seen a lot of stuff. And I've been in for 36, going on 37 years pretty soon. And so, you run across a lot of connections and people, and you have a vision. When you're a vision holder and you're looking for vision carriers, and everybody comes along and says, yes, let's do it. And then not even halfway through, they stop investing in it. They go the other way. They get scared. They go on to the next big thing that's more familiar and satisfies that fear more. And you're left holding the bill and holding everything that's broken and destroyed because nobody kept their word. You're going to have a hard time believing that God is going to take care of your finances. Now, I know people say, well, it's not people that provide, it's God. Yeah, well, guess what? I haven't pulled any gold bars out from my wallet lately or found them on the floor. God uses people, and that's how he flows. God is people flowing. Okay, so provision comes in through the hands of one another because we believe in one another. And so when we stepped out, part of me was like, well, we're going to see how long this lasts before I'm flipping burgers at McDonald's and we're camping in the McDonald's parking lot. Thankfully, we have solar panels. Our RV is paid off. So we got rid of all our debts at that time. We reduced ourselves to minimalists just in case it didn't work out. We could at least survive, right? And so that we start out with $4,000 and no financial income coming in, no support coming in. And we did have Crystal. Crystal was our only support at that time. And I think it was, a couple $100 a month, and so we're driving a motorhome that's like 9 miles to the gallon, and we're going to take off. And so we take off with no open doors, and we just stay drunk in the spirit. And God tells us, don't count the money. All cash, throw it in the drawer. Anything comes in the account, don't even look at it. Just spend what I tell you to spend when I tell you to spend it. And so he told us, go buy a PA system, go here when there's nobody there to minister to.
There was no meetings, nothing. And he said, go buy a PA system.
Yep, so. No meetings going on. We went to one person in one state that was completely isolated, had cut off all her friends. And, we're there and we're like, you'd think you'd want to go somewhere where somebody had some connections, where people are wanting it. No, we went to where nothing was, a religious area where nobody wanted anything and everybody was separated from each other. And we just got drunk in the Spirit. Well, within 3-4 weeks, God was moving over that whole region.
Mm-hmm.
Videos went out.
Mm-hmm.
We're invited. The nation opened up. At the end of that year, God says, look in the account. We look in the account and there's $4,000. What we started with was in the account at the end of the year. And we had traveled all over. We had bought supplies. We had rented conference rooms. We had sowed money to people. We had fixed things. We had all this stuff. And so I said, wow, God, we still have $4,000. How is that possible? He says, now look at what came in. Now, half the time, we didn't even take up offerings. We were too drunk in the Spirit to take up offerings. Mm-hmm. We'd forget. And people would stuff money in our pockets on the way out. Or they would send us a little basket before we took off out of that city. And there'd be, those little prepaid Visa cards or whatever, But we ended up, I think it was close to like $45,000 that first year. And all we did was stay drunk, okay? That came in our travels, okay? And so this ain't about the amount, but the point is...
What did it prove?
What did it prove? It proved there was nothing to be afraid of. In fact, every time I've tried to cross my T's and dot my I's and try to be wise and try to do this right, and oh no, we don't have enough finances right now, honey. I don't think we're traveling. And we just need to, and that's what I was going through when we've been sitting here for almost 10 months. We've not sat here this long. And we're running out of money, using up credit cards. And I'm going, I don't know if we're traveling, honey. We ain't got no funds. God's going to have to bring in some funds. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I started to realize, wait a second here. It kept decreasing with that mindset. That wasn't wisdom. That was an interruption to wisdom. No, I am prosperity. But in order for me to manifest who I am in the form of provision to fulfill the vision, guess what I need? I need gratitude. So I need to direct my gratitude towards what is prosperity. Well, money isn't prosperity. Money is supply, right, and the byproduct of prosperity. Prosperity is this. Prosperity is family. Prosperity is all those that saw your heart and loved you and cheered you on. So I just sat there and I just began to get drunk on the love of everybody that we love and that loves us. And that is my prosperity. And as that happened, that gratitude began to be like a magnet. And all of a sudden, people just started blessing us left and right so that we can get going and start traveling again.
Right.
So we thank you all for being the blessing and the byproduct of gratitude and being gratitude.
Right. I like what Robert said. I realized I am already, and it is revealed during the unknown. Yes. I think for me, that is my biggest thing, is when it's time to step out or do something that is unfamiliar, going into the unknown. Yes. I'm looking for security. I'm looking for protection, and all these fears and anxieties are coming up. And I realized that the last couple of days, I'm looking for security and protection. That's right. And when I flipped it over, I realized I am those things. That's right. So the very thing we think we need or we're looking for, we already are. Yes. And you won't know until you're walking into the unknown just how you already are those things that you thought you needed.
Yes, that's right. And I think what he said was powerful.
Yes.
But let me say this real quick about the ego, okay? Because I want people to understand that when you're dealing with familiarity, it is the ego. But the ego is not some separate thing you're trying to get out of your head or kill. Because as long as you see your ego as an enemy, you will become an ego to the ego, okay? So your ego, and we were talking the other night with Lynn, and I was speaking things. She's like, oh, that's good. I'm going to type it and send it to you. And so this is what we were talking about the other day. Ego, it's you trying to protect yourself through a wrong conclusion of yourself. Ego is splintered traumatic events. And so you don't have ego in one place. Ego is trauma-based conclusions and triggers and lies about you that are spread out as broken glass in your thought process, okay? And so we'll deal with ego in one familiar place, but then we're going to have to deal with ego in another familiar
Mhm.
place. Okay. And the unknown is what helps you heal the ego. It helps you to renew your mind. Okay. Ego is you trying to protect yourself through a wrong conclusion of yourself. And I want you to hear that, because wherever you need to protect yourself from
Mhm.
things around you in order to do the will of God or be led by the Spirit, you're not led by the Spirit. You're led by your flesh. You're led by your ego, and you're protecting your pain. And so the unknown begins to break open everything in you, the parts of you that you have not faced, and begins to reconcile those parts through the pressurized situations where you cannot wiggle your way out or escape yourself. So realize everything you're experiencing in your life is you.
Mhm.
And everything that you're trying to run from in the experience of your life is you.
Mhm.
Okay. And it's the broken parts of us that we despise,
Right.
or we don't think was smart enough to get out of this situation. So we've learned, and we're not going to do that again. And I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's going to a church, a religious church, and you've been freed from religion, but you're feeling the need to go and be a part of fellowship, even if you don't agree with the message. Get out of the familiar and do it. I don't care if it's quitting your job and living by faith. Get out of the familiar and do it. I don't care if it's leaving the ministry and getting a job or feeling the call to business. Do it. Okay. I don't care if it's, taking plant medicine and you're afraid you're going to go insane. Do it. All right. Whatever it is that you are afraid of,
Mhm.
you need to crush that thing by simply stepping out and putting yourself in a position to let it smack you in the face if that's what you're afraid of. Because if you can't believe that divinity's got your back, and that you as divinity is indestructibility, if you're claiming that you are spirit and you're indestructible, you got to put your actions where your mouth is, and you've got to step out and you've got to put actions to it. Simple as that.
Mhm.
Just be it.
Let's go.
Just be it. Let's be it. And that's where I'm at. What did she say up there, Jen? She says, I remember the unfamiliar of flying to Washington to meet glory peeps I never met. That's right, Jen.
And Jen, can you tell us, stepping, because one of the questions is, what did you experience for yourself, or what did you realize
Yes.
when you stepped out into the unfamiliar?
Yes.
Like, what was the fruit of that for you? I know our lives have been changed by meeting you and
Yes.
everybody else on here.
That's right. That's right. So, yeah, I would like Jen, if she
Yeah,
does
she
have
can
something.
respond.
You don't get to go when you're comfortable. Uncomfortable and unfamiliar is the way. And I like what Heather says here. I walked away from an amazing job and let go of most of my belongings. I moved south to the unfamiliar and had to embrace it and me.
Embrace yourself.
Yes.
Oh,
And
yeah,
you know what,
that's
Heather?
good.
You have had major breakthroughs in your life because of that, And like what Robert said, so good. I'm realizing this is where I am now. Yes.
Right.
You're realizing that is where you are now. And so you see, this is what sets you free, because you actually cannot believe in goodness, grace, and faithfulness and mercy if you don't put yourself in a position for the opposite to happen, so that you can see it was outside of your ability to measure up, to still be secured by goodness, grace, and faithfulness and mercy. So I know in my life, it was where sin was abounding that I recognized grace abounding. It was where, when fear was present, I was able to discern perfect love coming in. All right. And so, like Daryl here. Now, Daryl, let's balance this thing. So just step out now, whatever I want to do. No money, no clue, with wife and children. Now, of course, there's preparations. I'm not saying take your toothbrush and in the back of your pocket and just start walking and hoping you have a place to stay. We're not talking extreme, right? We're basically saying here that take some baby steps in those directions, right? Oh,
Right.
well, now I can't get out of here. How do I get out of here? Okay. Take some baby steps. Step out.
Yes.
Experiment. Instead of expecting the worst, expect something good.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. What if
Yeah.
every day there's an opportunity for us to step out into the unknown?
Yes.
Like you said, if somebody that like your family member, a spouse, a sibling, whatever, even your children, respond to you the same way every single time, make a conscious, intentional decision to not respond the same way you do. Don't do the dance. I don't know if you guys noticed, there's a dance we get familiar with. There are people, they respond, we respond back. And then we're wondering, how am I going to get out of this? Well, you get out of it when you stop doing the dance.
That's right.
So if you have just a simple situation like that, where there's people respond a certain way to you and you don't want to respond, then don't.
And don't.
Make a conscious decision to, okay, I'm now going to respond this way. I want to reflect this. I want to be this.
Yes.
Then do it. Try it.
Yes.
And if you don't do it, you'll have another opportunity to keep having those chances to respond differently than what you are familiar with.
Yes. Now you're going to know the difference between the healthy familiar, which is just stability, and the familiar that is hiding the trauma-based fear and self-manipulated excuses. You'll notice because you're antsy and you feel like you have to make a decision. That's the familiar. The familiar where you have to make a decision. Well, if I don't do this, these people aren't going to love me anymore. If I do this, these people aren't going to love me anymore, or they're going to think I'm weird, or what will people think? That's the place you need to step out, because you're dealing with that mindset. But where you just feel like I'm good here and there's a door open and I can go there, and I can step out, but there's no striving within. You're confident, you're stabilized. Your mind isn't manipulating you. Okay. Like, I don't feel the need to argue with people that want to fight doctrines. Now, sometimes I'm entertained by it and will, respond back to them to, something that they can't unhear that will be a thorn in their flesh that will eventually cause them to cross over into levels of freedom later.
Right.
But other than that, I just, whatever. And so it is really, go ahead. You got someone else?
I want to share what Jen said.
Yeah. Okay. So what Jen said, when I stepped out, I realized that God was with me. People actually were happy to be with me and love flowed freely. Now, Jen, that is what I'm talking about.
Woo!
Because when you step out, this is the result you're going to see. It might look a little bit different in each situation, but that's the outcome, is that you're going to experience what it means to be honored, celebrated, loved, and embraced. And boy, that is so good, Jen. I felt the glory on that.
Yeah, me too.
And so, so be encouraged. As you are in this season, in this journey, you're going to have all kinds of opportunities that are maybe things that you were prejudiced against 5 years ago, that you're now finding yourself stepping into, or things that went against your spiritual belief, but now your belief is starting to change and you're saying, well, I'm kind of feeling like the Father is leading in this direction. And maybe those in your boat aren't going that direction. And so now you're afraid of losing friends. You know what? If you lose them, then it's either that season has ended and you're getting new friends, or they were never your friends in the first place. So, it really exposes, when you step out of the familiar and into the unknown, it really exposes who is actually with you in the sense of their true intentions of why they're in the relationship, and who's there to just take something from you. And again, we're not here to be suspicious of any of that, but it is nice to know so that we're not investing in that which is just falling by the wayside. We're hitting the mark. We're coming into alignment. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we close up shop today, honey?
No, I think we hit a lot of things, and just realized, based upon all the comments here, of everybody struggles with fear.
Everybody does.
Everybody does.
Just do something about it.
Yeah, let's face it together.
Yeah.
Let's step out into the unknown together. And a lot of areas you've already stepped out in the unknown. And go back and remember, like we just did, where you wrote things down of what you experienced when you stepped into the unknown, so that it'll help you as you're continually stepping out into more and more unknown, that you realize there is goodness in there. There is love. There is that version of you that you've been longing to meet, like in Frozen 2. You know, the very thing she was looking for was herself.
That's right.
You know, in the unknown. So it's a beautiful journey that we are all on, and we're all doing it together.
That's right. It's beautiful. Well, it's been wonderful. You can go to our website at foggm.org. Soon we will be changing the name. I just haven't gotten that far. We've been literally laboring day and night with people. It's been amazing. But Life Imagined is the new name that we are going to be manifesting as we image in to this reality.
Manifesting.
Feel free if you want to, bless us, trade to help us go across the nation. We receive it, and we thank all those who have supported us financially as well. And we will not be on Saturday. Yeah, Heather, we're coming over to your place. We will not be on this Saturday due to Good Friday, and a lot of families are going to be out. We're going to take a little break and spend some time. My wife and I are going to spend some quality time together Saturday, going within and going deeper into some of these areas we're talking to you about, so that we can be even more equipped and more available in what we're carrying of Christ to all of you, because that's what moves me. It ain't. I don't see, for me to step out of the familiar and into the unknown, I ain't motivated for my love for God. That's not enough for me, because I am love, and me and God are one. And I already know it doesn't matter what I do or don't do, I'm in that love. But you know what motivates me is my love for people. It's my love to come and be a mirror reflection of unconditional love, of grace, of mercy, of forgiveness, of embrace, so that people know they're loved. And I want to be as effective as possible in the way in which I present love and grace. And so that's why we are willing to jump into the unknown, because we want to see people set free from everything they have been bound to in their own minds. Right. And so that's our hearts. That's what we love. We just love people, and we just love you, and we're just thankful for you. So thank y'all. And
we love you guys.
You have a wonderful weekend, and have a wonderful Good Friday and Easter. And we will see y'all next week. Love y'all. Bye-bye for now.